Good afternoon. My name is Grandpa Steve, and I'm going to read you a book today. The book is called Pete the Cat's Got Class by James Dean. It's math time, says Pete's teacher, Mr. G. Pete the cat loves math. He loves how the numbers work together. If I add 3 red blocks and 4 yellow blocks together, how many blocks would we have in all? Says Mr. G. Pete raises his hand. 7 blocks, says Pete. 3 plus 4 equals 7. Very good, Pete, says Mr. G. Mr. G asks the class a subtraction question. If I take 2 blocks away from 7 blocks, how many blocks will be left? Pete raises his hand, but the teacher calls on Tom. Tomcat. 9, says Tom. Pete feels bad for Tom. Tom is super smart. He can name all the dinosaurs. He just has a little trouble with math. Pete has an idea. He will help Tom become awesome at math. Helping is cool. Especially if you're a cool cat named Pete. On the bus home from school, Pete sits next to Tom. Tom, do you want to come over to play? Tom asks. I got some cool new race cars for my birthday. Awesome, says Pete. We can do our math homework, and then we can race the car. I hate math, says Tom. You don't hate math, Pete tells Tom. You just don't love it. Pete sets up some blocks. If I add 5 blue blocks and 3 orange blocks together, how many blocks will we have in all? This is boring, says Tom. Can't we play with my race cars? This gives Pete a great idea. Sure we can, he says. Pete lines up some race cars. If 5 red cars are going to the racetrack and 5 yellow cars are going to the car wash, how many cars are on the road, he asks. Easy, says Tom. 10 cars, like a traffic jam. Now what if 2 of the cars stay home, says Pete. How many cars would be left? Says Tom, studying the lineup. 8 cars. Right, says Pete. See, I told you that math is awesome. Pete quizzes Tom one more math problem after the next. 4 cars minus 1. 3, says Tom. 8 cars plus 7, says Pete. 15, says Tom. I can't believe it. I'm doing math and I'm loving it. Pete and Tom do their homework. Let me see if you need my help, says Pete. Thanks, says Tom, but I know what I'm doing now. The next day, Pete hands in his math homework. Tom does too. After lunch, the teacher passes back their assignment. Pete and Tom each got just 1 wrong. I'd like to see you 2 after class, says Mr. G. You both know not to copy someone else's homework, says Mr. G. We didn't copy, says Pete. You both got the exact same answer wrong, Mr. G tells them. How can we prove that we got the answers on our own, says Tom. I know, Pete tells him. Bring your race cars to school tomorrow. Why, Tom asks. You'll see, says Pete with a smile. Next day, Pete and Tom get to school early. What are all the race cars for? Asked Mr. G. To show you how Tom got to be so smart at math, says Pete, the cat. Give Tom a math problem, Pete says. Any math problem. I'll get it right, says Tom, without Pete's help. Mr. G gives Tom one math problem after the other, and Tom uses the race cars to get all the answers right. Wow, says Mr. G, I am impressed. Pete helped me by making math fun, Tom says. I think that's something we can all learn from Pete, says Mr. G. Taken from Pete. Math is neat. Can you guys do these problems? Write them down or get the book better and see if you can do these problems. But that's it from me and Pete Cat, who has class. Bye.